to another edition of Thunderdome. This is 11.2. We're recording live in Thunderdome, and just recently we got a new projector, which allowed me to get better control of the soundboard. So, your boy has control of the soundboard, which is dangerous.
Shaboy!
Alright, so today, second half of personality. Here we go. So, we've got a soft J. Alright, so there's a group of people out there called the Neo-Freudians, which really truly means new Freudians. So this man right here, Carl Jung, which is he's so interesting. If you have any time to dive into this guy even more, I would suggest it, because he really gets into the self. He gets into archetypes and how we fall into these certain roles, and it's just an interesting read. Again, is it like scientifically based? Not necessarily, but you know, it's almost more or less has that philosophical Freudian id, ego, superego feel to it, because he's a Neo-Freudian. He came from Freud. So a Swiss psychiatrist who broke with Sigmund Freud to develop his own psychoanalytic theory of personality, he stressed striving for psychological harmony, which would be like congruence. So key ideas include the collective unconscious and archetypes. So Jung reflected Freud's beliefs that human behavior is fueled by the instinctual drives of sex and aggression. So he didn't do what Erikson did. So Erikson broke off and pretty much said, oh yeah, he did do what Erikson did. He broke off and said no to the sex and the aggression part of what Freud was obsessed with. Sorry. Jung was the first to coin the terms introvert and extrovert, and I think that you guys kind of understand what those things are already. But introvert is focusing attention inward, and an extrovert is focusing attention outward. You probably found out what you were when you took the psychology test, the psychology personality test. All right, a pretty cool thing is called the collective unconscious. So imagine everything that's ever happened to a human, the entirety of its species, is somehow given to you. Okay? Freud, you know, kind of touched on this, you know, a couple times in his books, but then Jung really carries this, and it becomes Carl Jung's baby, pretty much. So the hypothesized part of the unconscious mind, so we're not aware that we have all of this, that is inherited from previous generations, and that contains universally shared ancestral experiences and ideas. So the collective unconscious. So we don't know that this is existing in us. It's there. It's latent. It might be able to be brought out by certain experiences, and then all of a sudden you know how to deal with it, and you're like, how did I figure that out? Maybe it's the collective unconscious. So it's the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution, born anew in the brain structure of every single individual, says Carl Jung. So he also believes in this, you know, these certain types of roles that a human can fall into. He calls them archetypes. You know them from movies. So in Jung's theory, the inherited mental images of universal human instincts, themes, and preoccupations that are the main components of the collective unconscious. So common archetypal themes are expressed in virtually every culture: hero, powerful father, nurturing mother, the witch, the wise old man, the innocent child, the death and rebirth, the joker. You know, those types of feelings of like, oh, this person is that type of person, or you know, he or she wants to be the hero or whatever. So two important archetypes that Jung described are the anima and the animus, and this gets into feministic and, you know, masculine types of feelings that each sex has inside themselves somehow. And he talks about a good balance between the two, sort of like a yin and yang thing. So So the representations of feminine and masculine qualities. Jung believed that every man has a feminine side represented by his anima, and that every woman has a masculine side represented by her animus. To achieve psychological harmony, Jung believed it is important for men to recognize and accept their feminine aspects, and for women to recognize and accept the masculine side of their nature. So again, imagine yin and yang, and you know that on the black side of that famous image that we know from yin and yang, there's a white dot, right? And on the white side, there's the black dot. That's what he's kind of talking about, and kind of understanding that we have, feminine and masculine attributes inside of us, no matter who we are, man or woman. All right. So here's some examples of parts of the self. So these are, imagine the self as a bunch of different parts kind of put together. And some of these parts you get to show to people, other parts you hide. So we have some examples of that. The persona is derived from the Latin word mask, so it's what you would show people. It's your social masks that you wear in different situations. As a form of protection, you have your persona, right? It's almost like you're incorporating your reputation to your being, and you're letting people understand and see who you want them to see, not your true self. Then we have the anima and the animus. We just went over that. Then we have the shadow, the dark side of the psyche. You might have heard of this before. Repressed memories, ideas, emotions, weaknesses, desires, instincts, all probably coming from the unconscious realm. It represents the wildness, chaos, the unknown. This is the thing that you don't show people. Okay? That's what Jung would say. Then there's the self. So the unification of the conscious and the unconscious, individuation and self-actuation, kind of understanding that you're your own person and striving to become that, the potential, and then it contains all aspects of an individual. Again, we're not getting into Carl Jung too deeply. You could, and it's interesting to do that. Just if you did a simple Google search of, what is Carl Jung all about, or whatever it is, it'd be an interesting read. You would probably enjoy it, and you'd probably kind of understand yourself a little bit better afterwards. All right, more neo-Freudians. So we have a lady called Karen Horney. It looks like horny, but it's Horney. So, German-born American psychoanalyst who emphasized the role of social relationships and culture in personality. So she sharply disagreed with Freud's characterization of female psychological development. So if Freud is sexist towards females, which he was, Karen Horney is like the saving grace for the females when it comes to Freudian thought. So she especially disagreed that women were suffering from penis envy. So key ideas that she coined were basic anxiety and womb envy. So while Freud traced psychological problems to sexual conflicts, Horney found that her American patients were much more worried about their jobs and economic problems than their sex lives. And that's true. You come across that all the time. I mean, you can talk to anybody and be like, hey, what's going on? And they'll be like, work sucks. They won't be like, oh man, I'm just not, being fulfilled sexually. They won't say that. That's a part of the shadow. So you always get this thing where it's like, something occupational, right? Something with a relationship. Money is a huge stressor in people, specifically, adults. So she stressed the importance of social relationships, especially the parent-child relationship and development of personality. She believed that disturbances in human relationships, not sexual conflicts, were the cause of psychological problems. She coined basic anxiety, so that's the feeling a child has of being isolated and helpless in a potential hostile world. Feeling alone and unable to care for oneself in a hostile world. Now, children do feel this if their caregiver did not do the best job. So describe 3 patterns of behavior that an individual uses to defend against basic anxiety. So we have moving toward, against, and away from other people. So moving toward is having an excessive need for approval and affection. Think about this in your own world right now and try to figure out which one you might be. So that's moving toward. Against. So you have an excessive need for power, especially power over other people. So you had this like adversarial feeling, maybe, like I need to be better than that person or something like that. That would be against. And then moving away, excessive need for independence and self-sufficiency. You just handle things on your own. So basic anxiety happens, and then all of a sudden we have one of these 3 things happening in our lives. So moving toward, right? Like somebody comfort me, somebody comfort me. Moving against, I'm going to take power over this situation and this person who caused the anxiety. Or moving away, I'm going to step back, I'm going to handle this myself and reevaluate everything. That's pretty much what we're talking about. So it's almost like ego defense mechanisms, but just in response with like interpersonal relationships. Womb envy is Karen Horney's answer to penis envy. She says, well, if females feel penis envy, Freud, then males must feel womb envy. What is womb envy? Envying the woman's capacity to bear children. Newsflash, men can't have babies. Biologically. Even though James Charles had a weird picture the other day, it looked like he was pregnant. I didn't really go into it. Anybody see that? But
No, and I'm honestly kind of glad.
But I don't know. I think about this in my own life and if I've ever felt womb envy, and I might have. My wife was pregnant. She's been pregnant twice. And you kind of feel, I'm a guy who wants to help, right? I want you to be in your best position. That's my personality. I want you to be in your best position and feel good about things, and that'll help me get what I want. You feel helpless as a husband or a significant other with the person who is pregnant because you almost can't do anything to help them through this situation. I don't know if I've ever felt womb envy, but I've definitely felt helpless in a situation where my wife was in pain and I couldn't help her through the situation. I don't know if that's womb envy. I don't know if Karen Horney would think that was, but maybe that's the closest I've ever gotten to feeling something like that. All right. Alfred Adler, another neo-Freudian. This guy did inferiority and superiority complexes. So Alfred Adler, Austrian physician who broke with Sigmund Freud and developed his own psychoanalytic theory of personality, which emphasized social factors and the motivation towards self-improvement and self-realization. Key ideas were the inferiority complex and the superiority complex. So Adler believed that the most fundamental human motive is striving for superiority, the desire to improve oneself, master challenges, and move towards self-perfection and self-realization. Striving towards superiority arises from universal feelings of inferiority that are experienced during infancy and childhood. When the child's When the child is helpless and dependent on others, people would then compensate for their real or imagined weaknesses by emphasizing their talents and abilities, which a lot of people do. I'll have to check that out, Scarlett. So, inferiority complex, a general sense of inadequacy, weakness, and helplessness. People with an inferiority complex are often unable to strive for mastery and self-improvement. And the lack of compensation, which is just, I don't know. I've said this a million times. One of the worst things to feel as a human is less than. It does weird things to the brain. It makes you feel unable. And if you feel unable, guess what? You act unable, you know? You never do anything to, master a certain task or something like that. It's just like, oh, well, I'm a failure, or you know what I mean? Something like that. It's negative self-talk all the time. Then we have the superiority complex, which is interesting because it comes from inferiority. So they overcompensate for their feelings of inferiority. So they feel less than, but they don't sit back and feel less than. They try to exert, superiority over the situation or other people. So behaviors caused by a superiority complex might include exaggerating one's accomplishments and importance in an effort to cover up weakness and denying the reality of one's limitations. You might know somebody like this. You might be somebody like this. And yeah, I mean, this is an example of an ego defense mechanism. So anxiety-provoking stimuli from the outside world, the environment, comes at you, makes you feel one way or the other. And if it makes you feel inferior, you might, again, just feel less than and be, semi-reluctant to go after whatever it is you need to accomplish to feel more than. Or you have the, complete opposite reaction to it and you strive for superiority over certain things. All right, evaluating Freud and the psychoanalytic perspective on personality. Look, again, Freud is just super, super influential, super odd, didn't really hit everything on the nose, but had some great ideas. Some see him as a genius. Others contend that Freud was deeply neurotic. So, I don't know. If you just look at everything that he did, you can understand that, again, he's just super influential in therapy. Other than that, people broke away from him. His students, his followers, did not end up following him. So, problems with psychoanalytics, inadequacy of evidence, not really data-driven, lack of testability. They're so vague, all these concepts are so vague that they're impossible to objectively measure or confirm. And so, you know what psychology strives to be a social science, meaning that it has to use the scientific method in some sort of way. And you really can't do that with psychoanalytics. And then sexism. So many people feel that Freud's theories reflect a sexist view of women because penis envy produces feelings of shame and inferiority. So he claimed that women are more vain, masochistic, jealous than men. He also believed that women are more influenced by their emotions and have a lesser ethical and moral sense than men. And this isn't somebody saying that. He said that. He said these things. Okay? So that's, you'll see a question about criticism of Freud on your quiz. Cool. All right, humanistic perspective on personality. So this is, we finally get to the positive stuff. Again, humanistic psychology, theoretical viewpoint, the personality generally emphasizes the inherent goodness of people, human potential, self-actualization, the self-concept, and healthy personal development. So this is often called the third force of psychology, along with behaviorism and psychoanalysis. Remember, behaviorism comes first, then psychoanalysis, and then humanistic is born out of psychoanalysis, pretty much. You know, it came from the darkness. So in contrast to Freud's pessimistic view of people as being motivated by unconscious sexual and destructive instincts, the humanistic psychologist saw people as being innately good. All right? Contrast to the behaviorist view, that human and animal behaviors due largely to environmental reinforcement and punishment, the humanistic psychologists believe that people are motivated just for the need to grow psychologically. There's no necessarily, it's not like it's not a praise or punish or, you know, reinforce or punish situation. It's, I always want to be better than I was before. Here's Abraham Maslow again. I'm not going to spend too much time here because we've covered this at least 3 times already. Then we get to Carl Rogers. So Carl Rogers is awesome. He's my favorite psychologist. American psychologist who is one of the founders of humanistic psychology, developed a theory of personality and form of psychotherapy that emphasized the inherent worth of people, the innate tendency to strive towards one's potential, and the importance of self-concept and personality development. Key ideas include actualizing tendency and unconditional positive regard. We've gone over unconditional positive regard before. So Rogers called his patients clients. So Freud would call his patients. Rogers called them clients because they were active in the process of therapy. So they later coined therapy as client-centered therapy. Freud also did this, you know, basically saying that, you know, it is patient-centered therapy. That's what psychoanalytics is. That's what psychotherapy is. And humanistic therapy is pretty much the same thing, but you just focus on the positive. So actualizing tendency in Rogers' theory is the innate drive to maintain and enhance the human organism. Human optimization. What a funny thing to think about. How to be the best human. You know, I didn't think about that a lot when I was younger, but I think about it a lot now. So he believed that all other motives, biological or social, are secondary. He believes that we are made, designed, evolved to be the